Alright, happy 4th of July. We're swimming on a work break. That hot Borneo sun is out. Just did 10 laps. I'm reading a book that just got wet about Russians. Russian culture. Gonna soak in some sun rays, probably do maybe 10 more laps. 1776, the Declaration of Independence was signed from Great Britain in the middle of the Revolutionary War that really lasted until 1783. So this isn't exactly when America started, but this is when they declared that they wanted to start. Good holiday, fireworks all across the U.S. Good memories when I was a kid. You know, America, man, USA, yeah. People hang out in the pool on that day a lot and hang out in the hot sun. The world would be completely different if that didn't happen. Think about that. 4th of July. 4th of July. Just was reading someone living in communist USSR in this book, their apartment life in Moscow in the 50s or something like that, 30s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. You know, growing up in America, it was nice, 80s and 90s, man, compared to something like that. 4th of July. So in that original Declaration of Independence, my favorite part said, and every citizen will have certain unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which is law in America. I think a lot of Americans maybe forgot that law from way back in 1776. We're supposed to be happy. The pursuit of happiness. So much ugliness there now. 5 years since I've lived there. Still love my country though, you know. 4th of July. Swam 20 laps, read about 10 pages, 10 minutes of sun. 4th of July, the war raged on. A lot of people don't know the British had German mercenaries fighting for them. Mercenaries are paid soldiers like the Wagner group in Ukraine right now that recently revolted. And they also had loyalists, so half of the colonial Americans or so were loyal to the crown. They liked being British subjects. So most of them fled to Canada after the war. But anyways, the war raged on through many battles all across the eastern part of North America, Charleston, around Boston, around New York, Brooklyn. The British won some battles, the Americans won some battles. George Washington crossed the frozen Delaware River and on Christmas and had a surprise attack on the German Hessians, they were called, the mercenaries. Ooh. Really, towards the end of the war, or in the middle, it wasn't looking so great. The rebels, the revolutionaries, the terrorists in probably the British eyes, you know, or the heroes for America and what they taught us they were. Everyone's either a terrorist or a hero. Depends on who's telling the story. Okay, anyways. Doesn't look like they were gonna win, man. They were a ragtag army. George Washington, the commander-in-chief of them, had a lot of experience and they were gaining experience. Oh yeah, the British also got American Indians, Native Americans, that they said they were gonna protect their land and they were gonna guarantee freedom for African slaves if they joined the British side also. So they were also fighting on the British side. So the war went on through the winter and summer. You know, it wasn't a ton of casualties and deaths in the war. Maybe like 10,000 total from the battles. What really was killing people was disease. There was a huge smallpox outbreak. You know, people didn't have enough food. The soldiers, POW prisoner camps, like there was an infamous one where they would put the American prisoners in boats in New York Harbor and they would just starve in there. Pretty awful stuff. And you know, and other non-related deaths. So there was like up to 150,000 from both sides deaths from non-related or disease, non-war related. But about 10,000, you know, each died. From each side died. The numbers are a little unclear, especially from those days. But the war ended thanks to, get into this story. Benjamin Franklin went off to France, the man on the $100 bill, one of my favorite people in U.S. history. The mortal enemies of Britain, who just fought a war before, French and Indian War in North America, and lost to Britain, which was the reason Britain had to raise a bunch of taxes and try to get more control over the American colonies, which caused them to rebel. Okay, anyways, that was the beginning of the story, I forgot. The French joined the side of the Americans, so they sent a bunch of soldiers over. Actually, the Spanish too, and a little bit of the Netherlands aligned with the French. They sent a bunch of soldiers over also, but the French primarily. A lot of French came over, French commanders with a lot of experience. A Prussian guy, which is like a German, was on the American side commanding some of the troops. The war started to turn. And there were some other crazy battles I forgot. In the beginning of the war, there was a failed attempt to take Canada by the revolutionaries, rebels, which they marched up to Canada and took Montreal, and were going to try to take Quebec, the capital city of British Canada, but failed and lost the battle in a blizzard snowstorm right in the beginning. But then another one was, there was a naval battle, British versus French and Spanish naval battle around Jamaica in the Caribbean, where the Spanish and French were trying to take those lucrative sugar plantations with a bunch of slaves working and being tortured on them, but African slaves, but making a ton of money for the British Empire. They were trying to take those islands from them and failed. So the British won that. You know, the 13 colonies were only 13 of 23 North American colonies for the British. So they had other things going on. But still, the French in North America, for them, most likely the war wouldn't have been won. There was this decisive victory at Yorktown. I forget exactly which state that is in, off the top of my head from my research from the past couple of days, but decisive victory of Yorktown. And then there was a few major fighting stopped for a while, and there's a few skirmishes, but the British finally gave up. There was a treaty signed in Paris, and the United States of America was born. So then that was in 1783. George Washington became the first president a couple years later, 1787, I believe. The Constitution was written, and then the Bill of Rights, the other two documents that America stands for, you know, the rules and laws of America, how everything works. A new government that no one's ever really tried before. At this time, and all throughout history, there was empires and monarchies with a king or queen ruling over everybody, or an emperor, or, you know, basically religious authoritarian governments with a sultan or something like that, or other forms of authoritarianism. Most of history was like that. There was a couple democracies here and there, ancient Roman Republic, I guess, and the Greeks and some other things, but not much in history. So this was a new kind of government with all kinds of interesting rules, checks and balances. I could ramble on and on about this, I guess, but America expanded into 50 states. Wasn't perfect. It isn't perfect. Lots of black people as slaves and after suffered. Lots, even more Native American Indians, they are sometimes called, suffered throughout the European experience in early North and South America, but throughout the United States, pushed west, and diseases, and oh man, the original Americans, super sad what happened to them. Now they're just like 5% of the population. Okay, but let's keep it positive, but not forget about those things. But USA never existed, and got through the Civil War, World War I, World War II, just how things in the world ended up. Just imagine that. What if it stayed a British territory? The entire world would be different. You could say that for a lot of things, I guess, but 4th of July is America's birthday. It's my home country. I never was a soldier, never was in the military, but shout out to all of them. All right, happy 4th of July, world. If the USA didn't exist, the world would be completely different, especially the results of World War II. I know America's not perfect, too positive on the USA myself the past 10, 20 years, to tell you the truth. But, you know what? USA, 4th of July, yeah! It's happy to have 40 years of my life as an American citizen, my family history, immigrants from different places in the 1800s, 1700s, even 1600s, and early 1900s. People from England, Ireland, Germany, Austria, Poland, they came to that land, and today is July 4th.